Today, we want to encourage you and your spouse to grow in 5 main areas: communicating with each other, spending time together, dealing with conflict, sharing responsibilities, and strengthening your intimacy. Our hope is as you delve into these 5 areas, you'll grow closer together and grow closer to God through this experience.
So to unpack these 5 areas, we've invited couples from all around the world who are going to share their stories and how they've worked through these issues and how they're stronger now in their marriage.
You're not going to be just staring at a screen. We're going to include fun challenges and activities for you and your spouse to participate in together.
So before we jump into these 5 growth areas, we want to introduce you to the couples who are going to be sharing their stories.
I used to resolve conflict by crying. Every time we had a conflict, I cried. And I didn't say anything, I just cried.
And I got mad.
And he got mad, and I cried. And that didn't take us anywhere.
I think earlier on I probably didn't trust Sbu as much as I do trust him now. I trust his motives now. I trust that he's for me and he loves me. Whereas probably in the early years of our marriage and our living arrangements, I was more on defense mode because I felt like it was him and his mom and I'm just the outsider.
Initially, it was just this big blow up, and I guess we were both concerned, was this going to be a track record for ever and a day? But really, the most essential element was actually confronting it and just having the conversation. It wasn't even about the grocery items, it was about what had happened and how we had engaged with that disagreement in that particular issue.
One of the things that helped me is stop winking. It's not you did this, it's I felt so. It really changed the way we argue dramatically. I felt bad when you did it so, not you are bad when you did so. Because sometimes I feel he's not caring enough for all the labels that we have, but sometimes I felt is more accepted from his side.
Intimacy increases as we get to know each other. I know now more than the day when I married Jean that she loves me. I know now with deeper assurance that Jean loves me today more than what I could even imagine, ever possibly imagine on the day of our wedding, when we got married.
Now that you've met our couples, we can't wait to hear more of their stories, so let's jump right in and talk about the lifeblood of every marriage, communication.
So as we all know, communication can be difficult, especially between a husband and a wife. I know often I'll call Greg at work and just launch into a story. For example, one day I was going at lunchtime to play cards with a bunch of my friends. And I had the address, I put it into my GPS, and I pulled up when it said you had arrived. So I got out of my car, walked up the sidewalk, got to the front door, and there was even a sign that said, "Come on in." So in I went, and I started to look around, and I thought, this doesn't look the same. And I started to realize that I didn't really recognize any of the women either, but I figured, other women are playing this month. And so then a woman in the other room stood up and she said, "Okay, ladies, come on in for the school meeting." And so So she said, "Are you not here for the school meeting?" And I said, "No, I'm here to play cards." And she said, "Who plays cards at lunchtime?" And so she said, "Whose house are you looking for?" So I told her and she said, "Oh, that's 2 doors up." Humiliated. But I had to call Greg and let him know that this crazy thing had just happened to me.
Even though I was in the middle of work when Aaron called, and I think I was really focused on something, which oftentimes is hard. So Aaron will call if I'm in the middle of something. It's really hard to connect. But that really is what you were trying to do. Mm-hmm. You weren't trying to waste my time or interrupt my day. You were trying to connect. And that's the essence of communication. It's all about connection.
Mm-hmm. There's a researcher here in the States, Dr. John Gottman, who looks at bids for connection, that actually when our spouse approaches us and brings something up, like, "Hey, listen to what happened to me today," really what I was saying is, I want to connect with you. And we have a choice. We can ignore it, or we can turn towards and embrace that opportunity. And that's what Greg did that day. I called, although he was working, we had an opportunity to connect.
Well, let's now turn to our couples and hear how they've used communication to connect in their marriage.
I remember once we were driving together. We were going on this trip, and at the side of the road, they were selling watermelons. I just said, "Oh, look, they're selling watermelons. I like watermelons." And that was it.
And I was like...
And Jason just told me, "Yeah, I know you like watermelons." And he kept driving. And I got really sad, and I started feeling bad, and I got angry. And Jason was like, "Why are you angry at me? What's wrong?" And I said, "I told you about the watermelons." And he told me, "No, you told me you like watermelons, but you did not tell me that you wanted watermelons." So I understood that I can't just say something and like interpret that Jason's going to interpret it what I'm trying to tell him to do if I don't actually tell him what I really, really want. We passed a while ago
Yes.
again, and they were selling watermelons, and I told him, "I want watermelons." So we bought the watermelons.
Some of the lessons that I've learned about communication in our marriage, I've learned that it's actually not good to come into marriage with a lot of assumptions about marriage and how, I think because I work at Focus on the Family, you kind of have you know what you should be, how you should be talking and how communication is supposed to go. And then coming home and then that's not happening. For me, it would cause a lot of frustration where I felt like we were just not doing the right thing. We were not. And Usbu felt like, he felt like I had a lot of expectation, very high expectation of how he was supposed to communicate and how we're supposed to communicate as a couple. So it used to cause a lot of issues for us where he felt like I didn't receive how he's communicating and how he's wired. I already had standards for him that I needed him to rise up to, So I think that was kind of a big barrier in the first years of our marriage. But I think I've learned how to allow him to communicate the best way that he can and allow him to be himself and allow me to kind of, grow to understanding how he communicates and how I can better communicate because of how he's wired as well.
I'm not very good in listening, and I confess, I know that I'm not very good in listening. Okay, sometimes I pretend I'm listening and I just nod with my head like this. And I know that sometimes even my opinion is not very effective. So I stay silent. And when I say my opinion, she do always the opposite. So
Just about clothes.
yeah, just clothes, yes. For main events that happens in my life, of course, I have no other choice. I always share my experience with her. This is good for me because sometimes I'm rushed and she is my mindset. She is my, no, you have to wait, you have to go that way. What about doing this stuff? And so I really respect her opinion most of the time, and I love to share my experience life with her.
When I want to share something, I can never wait. So as soon as the thing happened, I keep calling him. I keep trying to reach him wherever he is. If you are at home, definitely I will go directly and tell him. But even if he was out, I just text him or send him a message or tell him just the super title of the news of what I want to share.
Which is a little bit annoying, by the way.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm doing my work and I have some stuff to do, and she calls me, "Can you imagine what happened with my friends?" Okay, come on, Dina, this is not the right time. Let's make it later. So sometimes it's annoying, but it's okay.
It's very important that, for me as a wife, that I can see that Brendan is listening to me. So he needs to nod and he needs to say, "Yes, dear," or words to that effect, and not be looking at his phone. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of our weaknesses, but I think that's a human thing too, in the sense that you always tend to want to process the next phase in the discussion. You're thinking about your next point that you want to make, and you don't really listen. And I think particularly for us blokes as well, we don't often hear what's being said. We hear what we want to hear so we can fix it. But what we want to fix often is actually not the thing that needs to be heard and listened to.
Doreen will always tell me, please, could you do this? And I don't know what I hear, but I hear something. And when she comes home, it's usually not done. But yeah, we try and work it. I mean, so now I've asked her to write things down for me, because when she lays out her instructions, sometimes it feels demeaning. It's like, oh, now she's mothering me. But if she writes them down, I'm easily receptive towards them, and then I can execute them.
Yeah, and I think a miscommunication for me as well. Like I normally think that Usbu's like me, where I tell him something, I think that he's received it, and I'll come back and it's not done, and he's like, please remind me, and I'm like, but I said, please do this, and he's like, but please remind me because I'm not wired like you. So it's a miscommunication because I think that he's gonna grasp it just because I've said it, because that's how I am. When you say something, I receive it and I'll do it.
And
but
I'm usually in the nothing box during that time.
But he's not. I need to remind him. We'll talk about it, but I'll have to remind him again, like, hey, do you remember that I said this? Can you please do it? So yeah.
And you've done well.
Thank
no,
you.
really, like, I do need reminding.
Yeah, thank you.
We actually help each other to be a better person. And when he is a better listener, I am less afraid to express my thoughts and my emotions, because some thoughts and emotions, I'm a slow processor, so I need to process my thoughts. And sometimes when I am upset, it takes me a long time to process my thoughts. And because he has become a much better listener, I know that he's not going to jump at me at everything that I say. I know that he's just going to listen through and wait for me to express my thoughts, no matter how long it takes for me to share my emotions. It has definitely gotten better, and therefore we are able to deal with these conflicts. And it takes time. It took time over the years for us to learn to do that.
When you just show that you are available and you're just free to hear even the unspeakable things, it really matters. So I felt it sometimes by presence, just presence. I mean, it's part of listening. And of course, the active listening is something that's very special. Now, Chris, when he shares that he's not good at listening, actually he's good. I choose bad times to tell stories. Yeah? Sometimes while he's watching TV or something, so I'm telling stories. So maybe it's
playing games.
It's listening and it's choosing the right time to share, I think.
Talk about what times of the day are best for you to have conversations, especially about serious things. Like I, for instance, don't like it when Brendan wants to talk about something serious at like 10:30 at night, because I'm tired and I know that I won't sleep well and I won't process things as well. And I have to make sure that Brendan's available for conversations so that he's actually going to remember what I've said, not just expect him to take on board whatever I want to tell him when he's trying to do work. So yeah, I think it's really important to choose those times wisely.
I think too, it's the fundamentals really matter. I mean, like if any of those gimmicks like talking sticks and things work for you, great. But for us, they're just gimmicks. And so what we needed to address was the fundamentals, like listening to the other person. That was absolutely essential. And figuring out what your communication styles are, like how you actually like to have a serious issue raised with you and what you expect that conversation to look like, not the content of it, but how you think it should unfold. And then I guess also is preparing for the fact that your communication style is going to have to adapt once you start having children, because that you can't then just drop everything and have a conversation on the spot once you've got children to care for as well.
When I have a concern, I usually keep to myself, which is a huge dark spot in my life. She picks that up from me, and then she creates an environment which is safe for me to speak and share my concern with her.
Yeah, Usbu is not really good with sharing concerns. I'm normally the one that actually has to say, hey, please, I have to throw it out of him, honestly. And it's tough, but I've learned to give him grace in that area, that, that's his issue. But yeah, I think I'm one who normally is able to share concerns. I can even share like on the spot, like, hey, I'm not happy with what you did there.
And
Yeah.
I need to try to receive that.
Yeah, that's also an issue.
From a very constructive point.
Well, it's not personal, that he just receives what I'm saying and doesn't take it personally.
In the earlier stages, I took it very personally.
Yeah.
And then walking away and coming back later gives perspective to what you were saying.
Yeah.
Actually, you have to learn to listen to your spouse and trying to know and understand what she's feeling, what she's trying to say, not actually what she's saying, but what she's trying to say. You have to communicate. Because you are so different. You think that you're perfect, know each other, but no, you're really different, and you will discover some things really amazing and stressful and annoying, and some things you will enjoy a lot. But for growing together, you have to communicate, and for learning to communicate, you have to communicate.
We live in a country where there's so much diversity, where I'm Zulu, that's my ethnic clan, and my wife is Sotho.
Yeah.
So even there's barriers. You need to find a middle ground, and you need to shut out other voices, because we live in a time that is very opinionated. There's social networks, there's parents, there's families, and all of that. And when we get married, I don't get married to her, I get married to her family. And that's how we are taught, that when you get married, so it's so easy to shut her out and listen to her mom because I'm thinking I'm getting closer to her.
Yeah.
So my advice to newlyweds is that shut everybody out and focus on
each
your
other.
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So remember, we told you you're not going to just be staring at a screen. So this is challenge number 1. We're going to give you the opportunity to interact with your spouse around communication.
But communication doesn't always involve words. So for many couples, you have a special handshake, a way you hold hands, or some sort of loving gesture that's just between the two of you. And we want you to practice that now. And I know for some of you, you're going, we have nothing. Great. So now's your chance to make one up. I know for us, we've been doing our special handhold for many, many years.
It's actually one that's been handed down through the generations of the Smalley family. I can remember your dad telling us, when you hold hands, you gotta put your pinky in between the second and third finger. So when we hold hands, this is what it looks like. And whenever we hold hands like this, for me, it just is a sweet, safe feeling inside, knowing that this is just our special thing.
So go ahead and practice yours or make one up, reminisce when this first started, or if it's new, what does it mean between the two of you?
Feel free to share your handshake or handhold using hashtag #Perfect10Marriage.
Welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed your first challenge and you came up with a really good handshake. Well, we want to shift and talk about the importance of spending time together. Certainly, we're all busy. We have a lot going on, and this can be really hard. I know it is for us, but Aaron and I certainly try to, as best we can, prioritize date nights. I remember one of my very favorite date nights happened. There was a new sushi restaurant that opened up near our house. And remember, we were so excited to go.
Sushi heaven. like as all you can eat, as much as you wanted. So
Say that again. All you can eat sushi.
So off we went on our date night. We were so excited, and we just ordered everything we ever wanted. And soon we began to slow a little bit with our eating because we were getting full.
We finally at the end just said, you know what, we've got to tap out, and we asked for a to-go container for all of our leftover sushi, only to be informed that not only could we not take it with us, but we had to pay for anything that was left on our plate. And that was so confusing. So we did what any good financial stewards would do. We just tried to eat and finish up whatever sushi was left. And we were just so full, and we still had sushi. So my wife did something that to this day I still am so pleasantly surprised. I was so proud of her.
Well, I don't know if it was just me. I think he participated too. I began hiding, or we began hiding sushi behind the curtain. There was a little decorative vase that had beads in it, and we put one down there and covered it up. And
I had some soup, and I was trying to dunk sushi
we turned
inside
bowls
that.
over and put them there. And then we realized actually what we were doing, and we started cracking up, and we're like, we're gonna have to pay for the sushi.
Yes, it was probably the most expensive meal we've ever had. In so many ways, life is exactly like this all-you-can-eat sushi, because the sushi just keeps coming at you and at you and at you. And now we're all busy raising kids and working and church activities and friends. And you think of all of the responsibilities, and it can be overwhelming. We feel like that overflowing sushi plate. And that's why it can be so hard then to carve out time to spend as a couple because of all these other responsibilities. But, you know, in many ways, in the same way we got to pick and choose what went on our sushi plate, you know, in life we get to choose. And we need to choose the things that matter the most. And again, Aaron and I, we get busyness. We have 4 children, we get all that. Both of us work. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing each other, making sure that we're spending time together. Well, let's turn to our couples and find out what they've learned about spending time together.
So what do we enjoy doing together now?
Besides sex.
Don't do that. Don't. So earlier on in our marriage, I realized that we're actually quite different. We have different interests. TC enjoys swimming. I hate the water. I get attacked by all sorts of creatures at the beach. So it's terrible. So, you know, so we have to find something that we enjoy together.
I've learned to love running with her. Not the run itself, but after the run when we go and eat.
It's a wholesome activity that we get to do together, knowing that we're doing it with each other and that we can look forward to more of doing the similar things together.
I like to travel with him. I like to watch a movie with him.
An English movie.
Yeah, an English movie, because we have a different taste in movies. I like cruising with in a car with him, because he drives like crazy. I started to kind of like it. And all the other things, we don't do it together.
we are totally different people.
Yes.
We are totally different.
I think one of the great joys that probably we have now is, and I think we're discovering this more and more, is our children, like being with our children, and that they're old enough now we can do family outings and even little family walks and things like that. And there's something in that, I think, that really unites us as a husband and wife.
I've really liked, in the last few years, we've had the opportunity to travel together a bit more. So I've tacked on a trip with Brendan, like he's travelled for work and I've met him somewhere, and just that discovering new places, and just having that time together. One time when we went in Sydney recently, we went on a tour of the harbour, and remember the host was just hilarious. She was so funny.
Coffee.
Yeah.
We like going on coffee dates. I think drinking coffee together rather than eating a meal, you talk more. When you're eating, you eat and you talk less. But with coffee...
Your mouth is preoccupied.
Yeah, with coffee, we get to have so much more conversation.
I think it was a decision that we took earlier on in our relationship where we decided to have one car so that we spend more time together, because I felt like every time you have your own car, you go to your way and I go my way. And we were forced to like I was forced to like what she likes and she was forced to like what I like, you know? And in that tagging along, we realized that, oh, by the way, what you like, I actually do like, and the other way around with you as well,
Yeah.
where we'd go to a braai and you'd enjoy it.
Our common interest is around the outdoor and food. So that's really something that we enjoy doing together. So in Malaysia, we have this term called jalan-jalan cari makan, and that's what we enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I like to serve with him as well. I like him in this when I see him in his service. This is a good time.
One thing that's been really important for our family is family dinner. So that's always been a kind of non-negotiable ever since even before we had kids. Just sitting down together, most nights, like minimum 6 out of 7.
When you were working the job before this one, he was coming home at odd hours of the morning. On the few times that he was home, it's either he's sleeping or when he's up, he wants to connect with the family, his mom and everyone, because that's who he is. And I felt like it put a lot of strain on our marriage. I really felt like I missed him, like we were growing but not together, like separately. And I was actually pregnant at the time, so yeah, he wasn't home a lot, and I was like, yeah, it wasn't a good time for me. But thank God it wasn't a long period of time. It was about less than a year, but we were able to kind of reconnect again. So I think, yeah, that time was really, really hard.
Because of the fact that we had a child coming, it put strain on me
Emotionally,
to be able to provide for them. So I worked more. In a couple of months' time, you're bringing someone onto this earth and you've got no savings. You've got literally, so go work and make money. And she's like, I need you. And then when you do have money, oh, by the way, I feel like hot wings. And then you're like, hello, we need to save. And like,
I remember I would even ask him to walk with me to the bathroom, just because I was so needy because he was hardly there.
She'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning,
And I said, please walk with me.
and she'd wake me up to walk her to the loo. And I'm like,
Yeah.
somebody pray for me.
When our son was born, and it was our first baby, and we were tired, and we had a long time of not being out or anything. We finally got the courage to leave him with my mom.
For one night.
For one night, complete night. And she told me, guys, just have fun and go. So we went eating, and we went to this sushi place, and we had fun, and we were laughing. It was the time of our lives. When we arrived at our house, we were so relaxed that we looked like we were drunk. And we couldn't stop laughing. We couldn't get out of the car. We couldn't even open the door. And I remember we just hugged each other and went right to sleep. I think that was the best time we've had.
Yes. I think too, you've got to prioritise that being together. It's easy when there's no children on the scene, but once children start arriving, and rightly so, they make their own demands of us, and that helps us to become better people, but it also means that they make demands of us. And so often marriage relationships suffer because people all of a sudden aren't as intentional about the spending time with the spouse.
I think it's so important when you're a newlywed, going into marriage, it's so important to be friends, like become best friends, like try and find ways that you guys can grow your relationship to become best buddies. I think if that's your mentality, marriage becomes fun. I think it should be fun. It shouldn't be something that's just the serious thing, It should be fun.
I'm a pastor. It's easy to get over schedule on ministry. And I used to do that. My ministry was my priority over my family. And I ignored Pamela and a lot. And that really hurt our relationship a lot.
Jason is a very good father, and and I am a very good mother. So we fell into a routine of being parents but not being spouses. And I ignored him just to take care of all the attention that our kids needed, and he did the same. Thank God we realized that we were doing that, and again we asked for help, and we corrected what needed to be done, set priorities straight, set our marriage as a priority before being parents, and it's been a good decision.
There's some things that you do when you're engaged that you should keep doing once you're married. For example, trying to conquer your spouse's heart every single day.
I think it's basic. It's something that we cannot ignore, or we cannot have excuses for not spending it, because all of us have excuses. But creating a time is doable. It's something doable. We just have to be oriented to do it. You're never too busy to spend time with the people you care about.
Okay, so here's your second challenge. Think about one of your most favorite date nights that you've ever had with your spouse. Talk about it, and then go ahead and start planning another date night similar to it. And we'd love to hear from you and love to see pictures. You can share those with us using the hashtag Perfect10Marriage.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed reminiscing about some of those earlier dates. Erin and I want to talk about such an important topic, and that's conflict. And certainly if you have a perfect 10 marriage, you never experience conflict. I know we don't, at least we haven't in the last 5 minutes, because all of us experience conflict. I'll never forget the time that we were taking our youngest daughter, Annie, to a soccer game, and it was I was stressed. I think I had stuff going on at work that I needed to be doing.
Well, and we were late, of course. And
yes.
It always amazes me, these little parks become like mounds of people on the weekend for soccer games. And so, of course, the parking lot was jam-packed. There were cars lining the street.
Not to mention that I had my young daughter in the back seat telling me where I should turn and how I should park.
And hurry up, Dad, hurry up, I'm gonna be late.
I mean, I was so stressed by this time that I was done. And finally a spot opens up, and so I'm trying to parallel park into the spot, which I can do. So I want that to be clear. I can parallel park. I don't know what was going on, but I was having the hardest time. So I'd pull and turn and then have to stop and pull up again and then try it again. And it was like after the third time, my darling wife goes, "Do you need me to park the car?"
Well, I could tell you were getting frustrated and
Really?
that your heart rate was rising. And I was like, you know what, really, honestly, I'm okay. I'm good. I can park the car. You take Annie and go. Well, my simple suggestion didn't go over real big.
Because I understand what you were trying to say, and that was very gracious of you to offer that help. How I heard it at the time was, you're an idiot. You can't park a car. Failure, so why don't you let a real parker drive the car, whatever. And so all I did is I slammed the car into park in the middle of the road, and I get out and I'm gone. I leave. I'm done with all of this. And I probably got about 10 steps, and then the thought occurred to me that if I leave my wife and young daughter alone in the middle of the road, it's probably not going to bode well for me. And so I came back and I apologized for my toddler-like outburst, and I'm sure we worked through it. Here we are,
we did.
still
We
in
worked
love.
through it. I believe we actually worked through it sitting on the sidelines of the game that day. We had a good little talk about, we've been going to soccer games for many, many, many years.
Ugh. You know what? The bottom line is all of us experience conflict. So the perfect 10 marriage is not going to be absent of conflict, because it's normal. It's just a part of life when you have two people who are very different trying to do life together 24/7. It's going to create conflict, and that's okay.
And often when we hear the word conflict, we even have a reaction to it. So often what we'll end up doing is avoiding conflict. We want to encourage you, don't avoid conflict. It doesn't have to be combat. Combat is where we're saying awful things and
Leaving your family in the middle of the road.
slamming the car into park and walking away. We're not talking about that. We're talking about working through differences, because when we don't talk about it or when we avoid it, what we actually do is bury things alive. And then what ends up happening is we end up becoming bitter and frustrated and angry, and the next time something happens, we have even a bigger reaction to it. So it's important that we don't avoid it, but we do it in a healthy way.
I love in the Bible, in the New Testament, James 1:2 says that when trials come your way, consider that an opportunity. And that's been so helpful for me to see conflict as an opportunity so that we don't end up avoiding it like at the soccer game, that we can figure this out in a way that feels good to both of us. So let's go back to our couples and hear how they've learned how to manage conflict in their marriage.
Well, I think one of the first big ones we ever had, wasn't it, was not long after we got back from our honeymoon, and it was over something so trivial and silly. It was how grocery items should be stacked in the cupboard. And initially, it was just this big blow up, and we were both concerned, was this going to be our track record for ever and a day? But really, the most essential element was actually confronting it and just having the conversation. It wasn't even about the grocery items, it was about what had happened and how we had engaged with that disagreement in that particular issue. So actually having the conversation was the biggest thing, sitting down together and saying, right, let's talk about what just happened.
We had just gotten married. We had all these hopes and dreams of getting married and moving out. Then my business literally came down 2 months before our wedding. I had to sell our car to finance the wedding.
The wedding, yeah.
And then it was evident to us then that, you know what, we are not moving out. We'll have to stay with the in-laws.
His mom.
Which is my family.
Yay.
Yeah. We still have the scars to prove it, or to show for it. But for me, there was no transition because I'm still at home.
Yeah.
And for her, it's all the transition because now she's moved out of her home and had to come into my home and also try and get into my life.
It was constant conflict there because Smooth thoughts nothing is going to change. I'm at home. I continue doing what I've always done. My relationship with with his mom stays the same. And I'm basically just like an extra added member into the family.
Yeah.
You know, and things are just going to go as how they used to, you know. He's going to come home, watch movies with his mom until late, come to bed whenever he wants to.
It was difficult to leave and cleave. And because you had to be the rock, the shoulder, the everything for your mother during the times of her abusive relationship, you assumed the role of being a father in this home. Your brothers still look up to you. Your brothers still need guidance. And now you need to leave all of that and cleave to someone else, and it was difficult. I didn't realize that it was difficult for me. I thought that, no, you just don't understand.
Yeah,
you know?
it was
because you don't want to be responsible for your family. You don't understand me.
Yeah.
When actually I wasn't doing what was right in the eyes of God for me. He's instructed me to love this woman. And I was sharing that love with other people, and it took a while to it still is constant reminding.
Yeah.
It still is. I backslide now and again because we're a very close family.
I think in this area, I've really learned to give Osbu a lot of grace because I understand the background. I actually put myself in her shoes, and I said, I'm also a prior single mom, and this could have been me to my son's wife, you know. So I looked at it from that perspective, and God has really shifted my heart. I'm able to give him so much more grace and not think that he's doing this on purpose and doing this to annoy me. For him to kind of uproot himself from the relationship that he has with his mom will happen gradually. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Yeah. And we've only been married for 4 years, you know, so some battles and some stuff that we argue about will happen gradually. Not everything will happen overnight. Yeah. So I've learned to give him a lot of grace in that area.
we used to argue a lot about non-important things, I think. And we found ourselves frequently arguing about some things that we really don't care. For example, which restaurant should we pick instead of another one? So one day driving, and we were arguing about this. We stopped the car, and we decided that we would never fight about that again. And we decided that for non-really important things or decisions, we were going to decide which one of us should decide, and the other one should accept that decision.
And respect it.
And that has worked
Really
well for us for a couple of years
Yes.
already.
I used to resolve conflict by crying. I always cried. Every time we had a conflict, I cried. And I didn't say anything, I just cried.
And I got mad.
And he got mad, and I cried. And that didn't take us anywhere. And then for a period of time, not a long time, I didn't say anything. And I was just rolled with it. But that's starting hurting my heart and hurting our relationship more than we even imagined. And then we asked for help and learned how to deal with conflict the correct way and how to communicate the correct way. And it was perfect for our marriage. And now we have our boundaries, we have our rules, and we know how to fight, basically.
Disagreeing is healthy. I mean, this is healthy for marriage. I mean, the very smooth marriage is not healthy. So sometimes you have, we say in Egypt it's pepper a bit, over the food. It's some pepper in the marriage is required, and I think it's healthy, yes.
One of the things that helped me that stop pointing. It's not you did this. It's I felt so. It really changed the way we argue dramatically. I felt bad when you did so. Not you are bad when you did so. Because sometimes I feel he's not caring enough or all the labels that we have. But sometimes I felt is more accepted from his side. Is it?
Mitch.
Okay. I don't know.
There was one period where we were both emotionally really drained, and we were in a conflict. There was a particular conflict that we really couldn't move on, and we just couldn't move on. Yeah, and so we actually have a couple mentor whom we went to, and these are people who love us, who will listen to us, and they will not judge us. They will give us loving advice, and that's something we are very blessed to have. But it's also something that didn't just happen. We have been very intentional in surrounding ourselves, our families, with people, like-minded people who love us, who care for us. And so these are people who have really helped us in times of conflict. Yeah.
Mentors are important for me because they provide a very safe place for me to sound out and to express my thoughts, my frustrations. And the fact is, not everything that I have in my mind, I'm able to say directly to Jean. So having a safe place where I can express and to hear them reflecting back of what I've said really helps clarify my thoughts, and also to give me a different perspective of the conflicts. And that is really precious, because the fact of the matter is that when we are in the time of conflict, in my mind, I'm not thinking clearly. And when you mix it with all the emotions, a third party who love us, who have the clarity of the situation as they listen to us, is definitely helpful support during such time.
Don't argue when you're hungry. Don't argue when you're tired.
Yeah, that's two big
Two
ones.
big ones for us. Yeah.
No kids around, so not that if we needed to juke something out and it needed to be done. It's not you're trying to hide it from the children. It's just that the children often want to
know what's going on.
or they want to be involved in the sense that they're hungry, they want to do their homework or whatever, and just as you're getting your momentum out and getting a fruitful discussion going, all of a sudden you're distracted by something else. So you actually need time to actually complete the conversation.
No
No yelling. There's no yelling allowed, and you can't use I don't know how to say this, hurtful words. They're just not permitted in our house. We don't yell. Other rules is we wait until our emotions are settled before talking or before starting into this conflict. We know we're mad at each other. We know there's something not going well. So we wait until our emotions settle. And when the time, we also pick the correct space and time. I respect if he needs his space, and he respects if I need my space. And when we're ready, okay, I'm ready. And we start discussing the conflict that we're having. But the first rule in our house is no yelling.
Well, lately, I learned to stop talking. When I stop talking, I give myself some time to relax, to rethink, and maybe find some solutions. I know that sometimes it's not acceptable for her when I stop talking, but I can give myself some break inside the negotiation, inside the fight, whatever you call it, to reposition, to put myself in another place, to calm down and finish this problem.
Yes, actually, this is something that used to annoy me, but as I told you, we changed by time. It used to annoy me, but surprisingly, I found myself teaching this to my daughter. So I told her, when you're angry, don't respond at once. So I found myself teaching her to do his way, not my way, because I used to speak a lot when I'm angry. I used to express. Maybe I don't say bad words, but I always express. I don't like this, don't do it again, but he's silent more the time.
I say bad words from inside. No, I'm kidding.
I've realized that when she disagrees with me, she's still on my team. We can't all be strikers in a football or in a soccer game. We can't all be defenders. One of us has to play as goalie. One of us has to then sit on the bench sometimes. And we might not want to, but it's for the benefits of this team.
I think earlier on, I probably didn't trust Sbu as much as I do trust him now. I trust his motives now. I trust that he's for me and he loves me and he wants to see me grow and he wants to see me become better. Whereas probably in the early years of our marriage and our living arrangements, I was more on defense mode because I felt like it was him and his mom and I'm just the outsider. Where now I trust his motives. I know that he's for me and he wants us to grow. He loves me and he's for what we are building. So even when disagreements do come, I'm not on defense mode. Like I can hear him and I can understand and I can receive from him when he says you are wrong and can we, do this in a different way. I don't think that he's trying to fight me or, he's just against me. I can receive him because I really do trust his motives. I trust that he's for me. And as he said, that we are on the same team. And not everything has to turn into an argument. I can just receive from him, apologize, and we move on.
So challenge number 3, once you've worked through conflict, there's an opportunity to reconnect. And so maybe you've developed traditions of how do we reconnect after we've had conflict. Maybe it's going out for coffee or maybe it's dancing, taking time to dance. So we want to challenge you. Take 60 seconds right now, right where you are. Maybe it's your living room or maybe you're in your kitchen to dance with your spouse.
Guys, I want you to reach out, take the hand of your wife and invite her to dance with you. Welcome back. We hope that you thoroughly enjoyed dancing together. We'd love to see pictures, so use the hashtag Perfect10Marriage, and you can show those. I'm sure you guys looked beautiful as you danced. You know, another area that we want to focus on is how do we make decisions together as a team? How do we divide up household responsibilities and really stay connected? Because the chore wars can create a lot of difficulties in your marriage. I know for us it does. I'll never forget the time that I came home from work. As I walked in, I could just see the chaos from you trying to manage the kids and homework, and you were preparing dinner as there was so much going on, and instantly I recognized, man, I need to jump in and help. And so I simply said to Erin, hey, how can I help? And I'll never forget your response.
I'm guessing you didn't expect the response you got, because I was kind of like, you know what, Greg, half of all of this is yours. So I think I said something like, you're a big boy, jump in wherever something needs to be done. And I don't know that that went over real big.
I remember feeling so offended, like, oh my goodness, I was totally just offering my help out of the goodness of my heart, and you're now attacking me. So I kind of very quietly went about helping. And then later on, I went to Erin and said, hey, you know, earlier, I gotta be honest, that kind of hurt my feelings. I said, I genuinely walked in and saw that you needed help, and I was really just trying to do that. And she said, you know what, every time that you simply offer your help, what you're implying is that all of this is my responsibility, and you're just out of the goodness of your heart offering to help now. But ultimately, it's still my responsibility. And I just kind of sat there bewildered, thinking, well, surely that can't be how I really think or feel. And honestly, you guys, the more we talked about this, the more that I realized that that's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I hear about this a lot with the couples I work with in marriage counseling. And so I know that it's not just us that deals with this. Really, the question I was asking that day, you know, you were saying, how can I help? Well, really what I was wanting to know is, are we in this together? Are you with me in every area of our life? And I see time and time again, and I know from my own experience as well, that when one person feels like they are carrying the bulk of the load, that resentment can set in, bitterness can set in, you know, someone can feel like they're being taken advantage of, and that just doesn't go well relationally.
No, it creates such disconnection in the relationship. But I think at the end of the day, as we're dealing with these chore wars, we've got to figure out some way to divide this up in a way that feels good to both people. It can't just be what feels good to me. It's got to be something that feels good for both of us. And so I know if our attitude is we're both equally responsible, we're trying to outserve one another, and then we're finding solutions that feel good to both of us, I know that we'll get through this. And I know our couples have gone through very similar experiences. So let's listen to how they've managed chore wars.
For responsibilities at home, we decided to go for what we like to do. For example, I love to cook, so I cook at home.
I don't cook.
Breakfast, lunch,
I don't cook.
Dinner, snacks. I do all the cooking.
Yes.
Okay? Pamela loves to do the laundry.
For some weird reason, I do. So what we did is we chose what we liked, and the other things we just divided them. So we have like a chart where everybody knows what they have to do and when they have to do it. It's not always, you know, done so strictly like it's supposed to, but that's how we decided. First we chose what we liked, and then the other things that none of us liked, well, we divided them.
Everybody who knows me know that I'm really bad at cooking. I'm not a kitchen person.
Yeah.
I do cleaning, I do anything. I don't like cooking. I don't like being in the kitchen. So Chris, one of the things that really marked my life journey, that I do my cooking and I make my food for the family every day. This is something really, I don't like it. But he sometimes texts me while he was in the living room. So he texts me and he tells me, the house smells amazing. The food you're making with love. So it's not anything special, but this affected me very, very positive. So I was very keen since the beginning. I think I got this message 4 or 5 years after marriage or something. Like,
That-
it left a very good impact on me. So I'm so keen about making food.
But that's only when I'm in a good mood.
Sometimes.
Otherwise, no.
I've divided my responsibilities by listening to her. I guess that's the right thing to do. It's the safest thing to do. Just listen to your wife. That everything else will fall into place. No, but honestly, I'm the fun parent, if there's ever such a thing.
Yeah.
And she's the parent. You know, she's the chore parent. She's
Make sure everyone is in bed, routine.
you know,
Yeah.
and just chill, man.
I know that one sure way to invoke the wrath of my wife, my beautiful wife, would be to either sit back and do nothing, like around like a crucial time, like say dinner and bedtime, or to disappear into the office without having a just cause, like say some emergency had happened, but just be gone, and then she's left to it. That would be absolutely that's dynamite in our family, you know, throwing dynamite into the arena. I think we've got better. Well, I think I've got better at things. Like I used to wait to be told. So
Yeah, it
you
would drive
know,
me crazy.
yeah, can you do this, or you know, can you bath the kids, or you know, now we just sort of we're a bit more familiar. I'm not perfect at it, but we are a lot more aware, I think, of just okay, this is the time of day where X, Y, and Z needs to be done.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it. We'll do it.
I think it came by nature. I mean, we did not decide from the very beginning that you are going to do X, Y, Z, I'm going to do ABC.
Yeah, we wasn't that kind of organized couple that we agreed on certain terms or stuff like that. It goes like a household is wife's thing and work is both of us think. Actually, Chris started to step in house things only for emergency. And this one of the things that was very pleasing, and recently it happened.
But this is good.
Yeah, but it happens. يعني, when it comes like this, even especially for a working wife, it really helps. I think in the Eastern culture, we don't have this commonly, that the man helps in the house. But when he do, it really reflects on her spirit, I think.
Because I work a bit later, and when he's working from home, when I come home, he knows I'm hungry. He will always prepare some food for me. So it's these little things like these fill our banks. Yeah, because our banks will get drained with all the busyness and all that.
One of the things my dad was amazing at, and this is why Brendan got himself in trouble, was that he used to walk in the front door from work, you know, get home and he'd be tired, but the first thing he would say to my mum is, what can I do to help? And I just assumed that's what would happen in marriage, but that's, as I found out, 90% of the time, most men don't do that. So, just to ask what you can do.
When we moved into our own place, I automatically thought, Usbu's just gonna, it's half, you know, he's gonna come through. And he's grew up with a helper all of his life. Like, they've always had a helper. And I've never, ever had a maid. Like, we did everything at home. I think in this season of our marriage, we've realized that, you know...
We are the maids. I'm joking. That's just me. No, we honestly, I apologize. We've honestly realized that we
help each other. We need to help each other. There's no person that's going to wake up and have the whole house cleaned by the time we wake up. You know, we need to wake up and actually sweep the house. We need to clean the house. Please remember, when you're taking off your stuff, hang them. If they're dirty, here's the washing baskets. Not on the side, not next to, but inside, you know, because there's no helper to do that. But even then, I've had to give him grace in certain areas. On a bad day, I don't have as much grace as I do on a good day. But yeah, we've learned to now share because we're in our own place and we can understand each other and the background and the families that we come from. So it's helped.
So I used to remind Chris that you have to do this. And when he even asked me, this is something bad about me. And when he even asked me to do it, his part, I started to say no. And this was a big success to me. I started to say no, right?
Yes.
I think there is something that it should be mentioned for all the newly men up. Because I do hear a lot of the problems for newlyweds, but the common problem is not stepping into the responsibility. And someone is doing nothing and the other one is trying hard to do everything. And this usually fails at the end. No one could do it. Even a super perfect person, he cannot do it alone.
Yeah, you are sharing new life, and responsibility is a must. I mean, it's not an option. So, as soon as you decided to get married, it's a new life full of responsibility, and it's a must.
It's not really 50-50 either. Like people
No,
sell it as
yeah.
50-50, and individual couples have different ways of dealing with that. But I think ultimately a marriage is ultimately about 100-100. You both give 100%. And what that means is there are certain areas where I think for me as a father and a husband, I just have to own that responsibility and it's all mine. It's not 50-50. Other areas it will be 50-50. Then other areas Katie owns it as 100% hers. And that, it's not, I think perhaps sometimes we go in thinking literally everything will be divided neatly in that way. It doesn't really work that way in a relationship.
And I think understanding each other's mental load, like if I certainly walk around most of the day thinking about the kids and what I need to do for the kids and the groceries I need to get and the meals I'm planning, and sometimes that can become quite a weight on me, but not to then turn around and think, oh, well, that's not fair because he doesn't have a mental load because his mental load is just different to mine. To understand that his mental load is work and much bigger picture stuff. But to appreciate each other's load is important.
I would say don't assume that someone has the responsibility for something specific.
Write
For
it
example,
down.
if you're a man, don't assume that your wife has to cook and to love to clean and everything. I mean, you're a couple and you're responsible for the entire duties of the house, not just one. And so talk about it.
It's a shared responsibility. Remember that it's your home. It's your house. It's not your house. It's your home, and you're serving each other. So also have initiative. Don't expect the other one to do things. If you find a dirty plate or if something's thrown in the middle of the living room, just don't assume the other one will pick it up. Do it yourself. You're serving each other. So that's a good. You always think that you're serving your spouse and you're making your home beautiful. So I think that's the key.
Challenge number 4, here it is. How do we say thank you to our spouse? Typically, what we do is thank strangers, really strangers on the street, more than we thank our spouse for what they do. Because again, we're both busy and we're both doing a lot at home and outside of the home. So how do we genuinely thank our spouses? There's a difference between affirmation and gratitude. Affirmation is affirming something in your spouse. That's a good thing. But what we're talking about right now is gratitude. We're thanking them for something that they have done. So right here, right now, I want you to turn towards your spouse and express a heartfelt thank you for something that they have done, maybe in the last 24 hours or maybe the last 24 years. For example, you know what, Greg? You get up every single morning and you exercise, you empty the dishwasher, and then you go to work. And I don't know the last time I actually thanked you for taking care of yourself, for taking care of the dishes, as well as going to work and working hard for our family. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back from the challenge. We'd love to hear, what are you grateful for? Feel free to share that with us by using #Perfect10Marriage.
So now let's talk about intimacy. It's a great topic, my favorite topic to end with. And we're not just talking about sex. There's so much more to intimacy than just our physical relationship. I think one of the most important things that we can keep in mind is that we're always changing. I'll never forget the time that I knew that there was a lot going on, you were worn out, and so I think I called you and said, hey, don't worry about dinner, I'm gonna pick up dinner on the way home. And so as I was driving by this pizza place, I'm like, oh, Aaron loves pizza. And so I pulled in and ordered your favorite pizza. It's pineapple and ham pizza. Proudly brought that home, handed it to you, was waiting for the big, huge display of affection for bringing you your favorite pizza. Do you remember what happened?
I do remember, because what Greg had forgotten is that I had developed gluten intolerance. So now I ate gluten-free pizza, and I actually didn't even like pineapple and ham pizza anymore. I liked pepperoni mushroom gluten-free pizza. And I know in that moment, Greg was like, I don't even know what a gluten is.
No. I just said, hey, put the gluten on my side of the pizza. I thought it was a topping or something. No. And I'll never forget that moment of just realizing, when did she stop liking pineapple and ham? And all it did was help me to remember that I need to make sure that I'm staying current with Aaron.
And so we want to encourage you to keep the attitude of curiosity. That I know that Greg is always changing, I'm always changing, and if I keep the attitude of curiosity, well then I'm not going to assume that I know what he's thinking or feeling or what he wants on his pizza even. That asking and being curious about who our spouse is today.
You know, another important part of intimacy is to remember, like we said earlier, that intimacy is more than just sex. Sex is definitely an important part of intimacy. But I think for every human being, there's a deep longing to be known. And that's what I love about this idea of being curious. Not only is curiosity about staying current, but I need to stay curious about what's really going on in the inside, because I want to deeply know Aaron. Intimacy is such an important part of our relationship. So let's find out from our couples how they continue to grow in their intimacy.
I would say that our culture told us that once we were married, we were going to be having sex all day long, every day, everywhere. And that's not true.
Sexual education is not very common in Egypt. And even for new generations, we are not having it in a transparent way, because sometimes we are shy.
I tell you honestly, the expectations about the frequency, the importance of the frequency, it was one of the hugest parts of the culture serves. Usually young couples are disappointed because even life is not the same after marriage.
Both coming from a Catholic background and having waited for marriage, to sort of shake off a little bit of the, it's naughty. Do you think? Yeah, that I shouldn't be doing this, because for so long you've been like, no, we can't do that. And then all of a sudden you can do it, and you're like, oh, hang on a second. Yeah. You have to sort of shift your perspective a little bit. I think that's changing a little bit now these days, but yeah, without it's being taught.
We come from a culture that's not open-minded. It's routine. It's not spontaneous. That is very secretive. That is very set in its ways. If you can recall a time you saw your parents kiss in front of you.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. There's no intimacy.
Yeah. Because what are you teaching the kids if you do that in front of them? You close the curtains, you switch off the lights. It has to be dark. It has to be dark. And you don't get to appreciate the next person's body because you're ashamed about your own body. That's why you do it in the dark. Because no one must know about it. So much that even when we were married and Doreen said we were pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh,
we have
our
proof.
parents will know that we're having sex, you know? So it might seem very stupid to someone across the world that we feel like this, but this is who we are.
Yeah.
Know? And that's how we were raised.
Since we decide to keep ourselves in purity during our relationship before getting marriage, once we get married, it was like discovering each other. We got to know really quickly that sex is physical, but it's also emotional relationship. It has a lot to do with the relationship and with even a spiritual aspect of our lives.
One of the high expectations that community shows is about not about the intimacy, it's about sex itself. So it turned to be that intimacy is the best part of it. It's not the action, it's the surrounding of it. I think this was one of the things that changed after marriage.
You've got to be willing to realize that quite possibly your expectations have been formed wrongly. And I think it's important. We live in a very porn-saturated, a very hyper-sexualized culture that has an emphasis on the physical, biological act of sex and not much more. And for us as Christians, we know that that isn't the be-all and end-all. And I think often there's a real danger, even Christians take that sort of stuff into their marriage and they have this expectation of what they think sexual intimacy should be, and it's not correct. I think the most beautiful thing about it is really when there's just that sort of raw, honest intimacy. It's not about the sex or the sexual intimacy. It's just about being together naked and having a conversation about mundane things. Who's doing the shopping tomorrow? Things like that.
There's a deep level of intimacy that you get to after being sexual with your spouse that you can't compensate with anything else.
And I think the reason why is because you're vulnerable at that stage. So you're at your most vulnerable when you are naked, when you have to bear all your scars. Because dressing up when you first meet someone, you could have all the makeup in the world, you could have all this glorified persona, and then all of that comes off for this intimate session.
And knowing that, when you've seen all of me, you still love me, you still appreciate me, and you still think I'm the most beautiful woman than any other girl you meet on the streets, and you've seen me, all of me, It makes you feel so loved and feel so known by your spouse, being intimate in that way. Like, it makes you feel like your spouse knows you that well, and he still chooses to love, to stay and be with you and do life with you.
Yeah. The other point is, we always tell young people about sex is that it is a 20-year warm-up. And what it means is that it gets better. What it means is that be realistic, that it is not just whatever that you see in Hollywood. That's not real.
It's a learning process. It's not like on the movies, it's just going to happen and boom. It's growing every day. And we've been married for almost 10 years and we're still growing in that area. Things don't magically happen. You make them happen. So I think you don't have to be afraid to open up to your husband or to your wife and tell them what you like and what you don't like, what makes you feel uncomfortable, or what you do like and makes you feel very happy. You have to talk it naturally and don't take it personal. If the other person tells you, you know what, I did not feel comfortable with this, I did not like this, don't take it personal. They're not offending you. You're growing together. So just remember that the more you talk about it, the more you grow on it, and the better it will get.
2 points I would like to say. Number one is not to compare your situation with any other couple. Number two is to choose your resources. So as long as you choose the right source, you go a healthy life, you go a right life, you go a straight life. So comparing and the sources. Never ask your friends, never ask other couples. You have only one source and you have to go through it to reach your goals.
Yeah, reading from the proper sources, I think.
Exactly.
But knowing more is not a bad thing. It's going to be a very good thing and healthy in intimacy issue. When Chris mentioned the Christian resources, one of the things that I've read early in my marriage and it really affected the idea of the sacrifice. We all have a cross in our rooms or something like that. So the idea is giving more than taking, even in their relation. sounded to be very related to even to this part of our marriage.
I think a lot of discussions need to be had about sex. I think we need to kind of remove this blankets or the secrecy around intimacy and sex. It's a conversation that you guys need to have regularly. Like, how am I doing? Am I still okay?
Keep up the good work.
You know?
We had two very different experiences of that, and so Katie had been very faithful and waiting for marriage. I'd made plenty of mistakes in that regard. So, it's funny what our expectations were, and mine was shaped perhaps a bit more negatively, and you can say in many ways Katie's was shaped more positively, and it was sort of learning to find that happy medium and negotiate that, and me to deal with mine and Katie to deal with her issues.
Coming into the marriage with a child from a previous relationship, I had a lot of shame. So I wasn't even able to connect with my husband on a deep level because I had that I have proof that I was sexual prior to my husband. So for me, I had a lot of shame, and it actually kept me from actually being as open, intimate-wise, and even enjoying sex because I had those emotional issues that I had. And we come from a culture where if you had a child outside of marriage, you were shunned upon. It is a bad thing. So I have a lot of shame, and it's like a barrier that keeps me from getting as close and as intimate as I should be with my husband.
I've learned to understand that with ladies, their body changes and they might not be receptive to having sex like they did before. I've changed my ways, even in appreciating her at her lowest. When I know that she feels like she doesn't feel good, to always reaffirm and reassure her that you're still sexy, boo.
I think also bringing God into that, I think it's probably one area where a lot of Christians initially view it as this sort of, that's the thing we do, and hopefully God's not looking. In actual fact, it's this beautiful participation in this gift that He gives to us, and so why wouldn't He be part of that as well? And I think it's not the separate thing. It's very much part of the gift that God gives us of marriage.
Everything being equal, you will be drawn apart. Yeah, not just in sex, but in every part of your marriage. And therefore, we always say that you have to protect it like a mother hen protecting little chicken, like fierce protection.
Sex is not just the icing on the cake, but a vital ingredient of the cake. Intimacy increases as we get to know each other, not just on the act of sex itself, but also with all the other part of the cake coming together. Our communication gets better, we understand each other better. I know now more than the day when I married Jean that she loves me. I know now with deeper assurance that Jean loves me today more than what I could even imagine, ever possibly imagine on the day of when we got married.
A marriage was created for us to enjoy it, every aspect of it, and sex is a big part of it. I think it's a word for women mostly, to not see it as like, this thing that is just for your husband or dutiful, but to actually get to a place when you can actually enjoy it for yourself as well. Do it. I think sex is good. I mean, sex is good. Enjoy sex. Enjoy each other.
Sex is good. She said that. I want to just
emphasize
that sex is good.
So challenge number 5, we have saved the best for last. We want you to turn towards your spouse and kiss for 15 seconds. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, this is so awkward. The Guinness World Record for the longest kiss was broken by a couple in Thailand, and they kissed for like 50 some odd hours straight. I know, that's unnecessary. So all we're saying is turn towards your spouse, kiss for 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Welcome back. Well, okay, some of you need to stop kissing, so I'm thrilled you've taken it that serious. You know, we began our event really talking about that none of us can achieve a perfect 10 marriage because we're imperfect people. And really it's about staying committed to each other and committed to growing. And that's why we covered some important areas that Aaron and I believe are essential to have a strong marriage.
And so we've talked about communication, time together, conflict, shared responsibility, and intimacy. And so I have one more challenge for you. As a couple, choose one of those 5 areas that you're gonna focus on continuing to grow in over the next weeks and months to come. And we have absolutely loved being with you and sharing this time with you. So again, thank you for investing in your marriage and thank you for spending this time with us.